All right, fastest 15 minutes on the internet, fastest 15 minutes in social media. My name is Judson Powell. All right, we're going to switch up a little bit today. And I know that the civil unrest here in the United States is continuing, and it definitely should. So, um, with that said, I want to talk about the revolutionary concept and how universal oneness deals with that. And so the concept or the universal law of oneness, or that everything in the universe is connected. Every single thing in the universe is connected. So that's how, like, one event can trigger like a massive event. And a lot of people don't realize that this concept exists. Okay, it's like, and certain things are unifying, certain things are will make everybody separate, and then there are certain things that everybody has in common no matter what. And so, and especially, and it works on many different levels. So on the level of family, that's why divorce and things like that are so bad, because it affects everybody differently, but yet and still it affects everybody. So whatever, especially if you're in family, father, mother, children, etc. If you're in a family and you decide to do whatever you want without self-control, then what happens? It has an effect on every single person in the family. So, so when people say, "Oh, I'm just going, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that," okay, and now don't get it confused with "know thyself and to thine own self be true." But if you make a commitment, you should keep a commitment. The same thing is true with people like President Trump. Okay, President Trump made a commitment to the United States of America to uphold the Constitution. Has he done that? No. Has he followed the rules and the regulations that are set forth by the country? No. He hasn't released his tax returns. He had to be forced to do that. I guess some of them have been released. I think the ones from New York State or something like that. But he does not follow the rule of law. Also, he dismantled, basically because of evil, he dismantled every single program, basically, and every single treaty, every single agreement that past administrations have put in, including past Republican administrations. So not just, he hasn't just done this to Obama, he's also done it to Bush as well. All right. So, and by separating from a lot of these treaties and from a lot of these organizations, it's kind of put us out there, especially when it came down to the pandemic. Okay, because he basically got rid of all the protocol for what would happen in case we had a pandemic. And because of that, over 100,000 people are dead. And you can say what you want, but that's the truth. 100,000 people are dead. And there are other countries that actually had worse outbreaks. And because their leadership was good, and because their leadership was responsive, and because their leadership had a plan of action, it was able to be, basically controlled. But that is a result of what? Of universal oneness. And something like a virus is basically, you have to understand that, okay, if it's a human virus, then everybody can be affected by that virus, right? So think of it like this. And this is how I explain it to my son. I said, look, think of it like this. We're all on the freeway and we're all in different cars. Okay? And there are 4 people in each car, right? And in our car, we're having a conversation, but in all the other cars, they're having different conversations. There's not the same conversation, and the same stuff is not going on in everybody's car, but everybody's on the freeway still moving in the same direction, right? Now, if I decide in my car that I'm going to do something different, that instead of moving in that direction, I'm going to turn around and go the other way, well, it's going to affect everybody else. Because my car is going the wrong way down the freeway, and somebody's going to end up what? Getting killed. So think of it like that. And also the fact of, it's almost like even the concept of parallel universes. Like people like try to call all of us, spiritually conscious people. They try to call us crazy or whatever, but there are many different universes that are actually, taking place at the same time. In fact, you might even be in more than one universe at the same time, spiritually. So that's what so we try to explain. So the law of universal oneness is just your regard for, having a high regard for everything else that's going on in the universe, which our president does not have. he's not spiritual at all. He has no, I don't even think, sometimes I don't even know if he's really a person or whatever. He might just be a robot, because, just like, okay, think about all the families at the Mexican border that he's splitting up, the children that he's putting in camps and all of this. If he does not think that is going to have, it's going to, and also we have to realize the universal law of action is also, a partner to this law. Because what? Because those kids are going to grow up one day. And when they grow up, they're going to have some psychological problems. And guess what? The world, the universe will have to deal with those psychological problems. Mark my words. I understand. And see, so I understand all of these, but when you don't have that kind of spiritual knowledge and that kind of spiritual wisdom, then you just go through and you do whatever. So once again, know thyself and to thine own self be true is not saying forget everybody else. It's saying know your downfalls and know your strengths and your weaknesses, and then know what you have to do in order to control those things. Because it's more, know thyself and to thine own self be true is more about self-control than it is about me just, like what is the modern day vernacular is, I'm going to do me, you do you, I'm going to do me. Well, that's selfishness, because me doing me could be, it's like, somebody has a father who's an alcoholic, and every day he comes home, he beats the dog, he beats his wife, throws the kids outside, whatever, beats the kids. You see what I'm saying? It's going to have a detrimental effect. But if he knows that he has a problem with alcohol, he says, okay, to my own self be true, and he goes and he gets help, that's a whole different story. And then you have people who are like the president, who is narcissistic, who don't care, and that doesn't, and all people that are narcissists do not manifest their narcissism, okay, because they understand themselves. And when they understand themselves, they say, oh, that's just me being crazy. I need to level this down a little bit, because that's just part and parcel to the whole thing. So now we have these riots and these revolutionary things going on. And so we had an incident, which is to me, which is very ironic, that George Floyd's murder is probably personal. It's probably not even police brutality. It's probably not even police brutality. More likely than not, it's over, like I keep saying, it's probably over a woman or somebody they both mutually knew, or something like that, or an incident that went down where they work at the club. But the perception that's out there was like every state had marches. Every state in the United States, all 50 states had marches, and most of all of the countries in Europe and a lot of countries, in South America and every place else, there were rallies about George Floyd all over the world, and it was unifying. And it's continued to unify. The thing that's happening now with the recent, now we're starting to get the residue. The residue of what happened is like now, just like these guys, these two cops that killed the guy in Atlanta, at Wendy's. That's crazy. Okay, and see that, and that's what I mean by understanding, because that one event probably, more likely than not, triggered their reaction, because they reacted out of fear. This man was asleep in the car, in the drive-thru. Okay, so what? But does that require you to murder an unarmed person? And that's the whole thing. The thing ain't got nothing to do with, well, yeah, it does, but let me figure out how to phrase this correctly. The thing is that why are you killing unarmed people? No matter what color they are, you shouldn't kill nobody that doesn't. If they're not trying to attack you, which none of these people. That's the thing that makes you know that it's systemic. That it's a systemic racist type thing, and also their fear level has been ratcheted up. Their fear level of black people is ratcheted up by the media because they show black men and and sometimes black women, but they show black men in a light that makes them look like they're all evil, and that you have to be afraid of black men, or that black men have some superhuman strength or anything like that. And that's what it is. So the law of universal oneness. Okay, so one of the things when you know yourself and to thy own self be true, but the one thing that destroys all of that is fear. And that's why I always talk about, the law of polarity as well, where you talk about the universal law of polarity saying, look, on one side is faith, on the other side is fear, and in the middle is balance. And these cops are not balanced because y'all sending them, and that's the other thing, y'all sending them out on the street half trained. I read somewhere where like there's like almost no training in some of these police departments. And then you're sending them out on the street with these dangerous people who they think are dangerous people, when most of them are no threat to anybody. What's a guy asleep in the drive-thru at Wendy's? How threatening is that guy? I mean, come on, for real. And now, but the law of universal oneness thinks that, okay, so now this is another trigger. And then we've had two in the state of California. We've had two lynchings that are unexplained, that they tried to explain as suicide. And so this is the other side trying to get back. And we've also had killings of police officers in Texas. So now we've got everybody tit for tat. And even though they're unrelated incidents, they are related. Why? Because the universe is one. The universe is one. So even though they're different, I mean, they're literally thousands of miles apart. But yet still, it's all the reaction from one thing. And it's police brutality. And it's not just the incident of George Floyd. We're talking about, as far back as, before, we all know the name Emmett Till, but before Emmett Till, from slavery all the way back, we've been seeing lynchings, we've been seeing, murders, ever since they started policing, ever since they started capturing runaways and all of that kind of stuff, ever since they started chopping runaway slaves' feet off and chopping their hands off and all of this kind of stuff. This is a spiritual, it's a spiritual thing. Why? Because you have done it ritually. White people have done this to black people as a ritual. Lynchings, picnics, all of that stuff, castrations, everything, all of that is all a spiritual ritual, and I don't want to, I got something else I want to say, but I'm not going to say it because y'all get mad. But the bottom line is that this is all ritualistic. So now the retaliation is basically what? It's Nat Turner time, because now the slaves are revolting, and even during the revolt, you got to understand that everybody, because of the spiritual nature of the law of universal oneness, everybody's going to pick a side to be on in the universe, because there's good and there's evil. There's up, there's down, there's in, there's out, there's out. So the law of correspondence, the law of polarity, all of those laws, universal laws, start kicking in, because even though we're riding down the street in a different vehicle or whatever, everybody's vehicle is not going to stay on the straight path. Somebody's going to turn their vehicle around and go in the opposite direction. All right. law of universal oneness, polarity, correspondence, etc. Anyway, fast 15 minutes or so. I hope y'all stuck with me on that. But like I said, is probably Nat Turner time. Anyway, I love y'all. Hey, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit all the buttons, but most of all, hit the love button.